Released in 2002 for PC and the original Xbox, The Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind was the long-awaited sequel to Daggerfall, at that time Bethesda Game Studio's most successful release. Morrowind went on to sell 4 million copies between its release and the release of its direct sequel, The Elder Scrolls Oblivion, cementing itself as one of the best-selling CRPGs at the time. After years of turmoil, Bethesda had successfully brought themselves back from the brink of bankruptcy, and it came back with a bang. After Daggerfall saw relative success in 1996, Bethesda decided to reinvest and stretch themselves over a variety of projects. While one team worked on 2 Elder Scrolls spin-off games, namely the Elder Scrolls Legend Battlespire and the Elder Scrolls Adventures Redguard, which was headed by Todd, the god of lies himself, a second team worked on 10th Planet, an ambitious space combat simulator in development as a co-venture between Bethesda and Centropolis Entertainment, the same company that made Independence Day and The Day After Tomorrow. However, poor reviews and sales of both Battlespire and Redguard combined with production problems for the 10th Planet led to the cancellation of the space combat sim and the end for Bethesda Softworks as an independent company. On their knees, Bethesda Softworks founder Christopher Reeve alongside Robert A. Altman set up ZeniMax Media Incorporated as a means to secure funding for Bethesda, bringing on investors such as SBS Broadcasting, and by securing high-ranking board members including the likes of Robert Trump, yes, the brother of that Trump, Reeve was able to successfully secure enough funding to give Bethesda Game Studio the necessary money it needed to finish Morrowind. If this game failed, so would Bethesda Softworks and the Elder Scrolls series as we know it. With the writing on the wall, Morrowind was shaping up to be Bethesda's final swan song. It's Hail Mary. After 6 years in development and 4 years of delays, in 2002, Morrowind hit shelves. 2002? This game's 18 years old. Holy f***, it's old enough to drink. And it was exactly what Bethesda had needed. A critical success adored by fans, with the game scoring 89 on Metacritic. Sales within the first 6 months hit 200,000, and Bethesda had secured their future. As reviews mentioned, Bethesda had sought to streamline and define the huge but empty world of Daggerfall. This was a decision taken by the higher-ups at Bethesda, including Morrowind's new project lead, Todd Howard. The entire team, including writers, artists and game developers, were briefed with 4 simple letters. KISS. KISS, short for Keep It Simple Stupid, was the key philosophy used to create a game that was more accessible to a greater audience. A philosophy that is, for better or for worse, clearly still used today at Bethesda. What this meant for Morrowind was a smaller yet more fleshed out world, a smaller set of skills, and a clearer main objective. Unlike Daggerfall, which is more like a fantasy life simulator, Morrowind brings the series closer to the action RPG direction it would see itself slowly eking towards. Gone are banks, horses, usable ships, multiple houses, randomized quests, and procedurally generated dungeons and landscapes. Instead, everything is handcrafted and thought about. It was these improvements that helped the game to grow. It was more accessible to new players. By just not forcing the player to delve through a difficult dungeon in their first 5 minutes of playing helped the game to become more popular. I'm not here to say accessibility is bad, because of course it isn't, but I am setting up to how Morrowind and later Oblivion would find themselves at the tipping point where on one side Bethesda is too simple and on the other they're too complex. Morrowind holds no punches, throwing its new main theme by Jeremy Soule straight at you on its title screen. Here you have your expected amount of options, which is actually saying a lot when you compare it to the bare bones approach from previous titles. Upon hitting new game, unlike in Arena or Daggerfall where you immediately enter your character creation screen, instead you are treated to an intro cutscene given some exposition on why you are on a ship sailing to Morrowind. You awake to the sound of wood creaking under the waves of the water and the beautiful face of Giab with his gravelly voice saying,
"Stand up. There you go. You were dreaming. What's your name?"
This introduction shows Bethesda doing what they can to make this series approachable to new players, and to those not familiar with tabletop RPGs. Gone are the hundreds of game-changing choices you must make before even learning the controls. Instead, we now start the game in a much more conventional way. After picking our name, we are guided through the ship. The entire introduction sequence, which in total lasts about 10 minutes, is the entirety of this game's tutorial. Seemingly short for a game that boasts over 500 hours of gameplay, but again a big improvement over the studio's past attempts. You are given the option to pick your race and appearance, with the game clearly indicating the differences in the choices you are going to make, helping with your decision making. Next we proceed into the censor's office.
Yes, we've been expecting you. You'll have to be recorded before you're officially released.
Taking the beauty of that voice, because most full voice acting ends after this point. You pick your class, your birth sign, and get a final chance to change anything. A number of tooltips introduce the game mechanics. You encounter your first normal NPC, get some basic lore, and that's it. You are let fully off the leash to do whatever you want. Morrowind gives you immediate freedom much faster than any other title in the series. No difficult starting dungeon, no easy starting dungeon, just a peaceful transition, and then you can literally do anything you please. Want to finish the game in under 10 minutes? Go do it. Want to learn how to fly? Sure thing. Want to die to an oversized crustacean? No problem. Wait, hang on. Morrowind is a product of its time, and while Bethesda were headstrong in their approach in streamlining over the offering that Daggerfall had given, there were some elements of the old school CRPGs of yesteryear that were left in. Before I start the circle jerking you over the many praises I have for this game, let's address some of the key problems that many new players have. Much like the tabletop role-playing games that inspired the original Elder Scrolls, Morrowind uses a dice roll system that is heavily influenced by one's stats. If you try to use a weapon you have no skill in, good luck having a chance to hit. In those tabletop games, this makes sense. Of course someone trained in only archery is going to struggle in fencing, but in those games you can use your imagination to fill in the blanks. If you roll a bad dice and are told by the DM that you missed, well, you can visualize in your head how your character could have done so. This doesn't translate into a visual medium, however. Instead, your sword bends time and space as it phases through your opponent's torso, and you hear a vague whooshing noise indicating that you have somehow magically missed.
You Enwa!
Please clap.
Here, Bethesda's goal of accessibility collapses. It is here that most new school Elder Scrolls fans stop playing. Don't get me wrong, I understand their gripes. It is frustrating when you have no visual indication of what you are doing wrong, instead possibly putting it down to a glitch or bug instead. But this mechanic, as it is implemented, is fully intentional and becomes much less of a problem in time. While it doesn't work exactly like this, I'm going to explain in the simplest way I can for any new potential players. Look at these skills as percentages. So when you try to attack a rat with a dagger while your short sword skill is at 5, that means you only have a 5% chance to hit. That's pretty low, right? Well, if that skill was at 45, now you have a chance to nearly hit half of your shots. That's much more manageable and not nearly as frustrating. Again, that's not actually how it's calculated, but it's a good way to explain to new players why the combat works like it does. With good class making and as little as 2 hours of playing, your character will be proficient enough to use your weapon of choice with little mishap. So this is really only a very early game problem. Morrowind uses the familiar bars from the future titles, including health, magicka, and fatigue. But unlike Oblivion or Skyrim, fatigue is Morrowind's most important stat. It governs everything you do, and depletes from simply running, instantly slowing your game to a literal crawl, especially with some characters' starting speeds. This is a holdover from Daggerfall, but where your walking speed in that game is quite sprightly, in Morrowind it is as if your character is walking through treacle, or as the animation will have you believe, that everyone is trying their hardest to prevent King Kong's finger from slipping out at any given moment. This change in speed between the games was likely in an attempt to make Morrowind feel larger than it is, but it instead makes travel frustratingly slow, forcing you to run and then forever have low fatigue, which impacts your already abysmal combat skills. To balance this, there are many spells and potions to replenish your fatigue before you enter into battle, but as with your combat skills, your access to these is limited until you're already a few hours into your playthrough. In 2002, you were lucky to find any RPGs that were fully voice acted, if any even existed then. The sheer volume of text, quests, and lore that any given NPC could pass on to the player would make voice acting this game, which came on a CD by the way, simply impossible. It is one of the many reasons why fan-made mods like Skywind are taking so long, but I digress. This text-based speech system is another barrier to entry to new players, and while it may not have been as much of an issue in 2002, it surely is in 2020, especially to the new school fans. These 3 flaws should be enough to explain to any hardcore fans of Morrowind why many people don't make it far into the game. The barrier to entry is simply too high for many people. So before I go into my many praises for what Morrowind did oh so right, I'm going to offer some fixes for these potential new players. 1. Accept that your class is important in this game. This isn't Skyrim. You can't simply change your playstyle halfway through and become the Master Thief Mage to the Companion College of the Dark Vampire HUD. You are role-playing and your role is limited, much like a real person's is. Pick the weapon you want to specialise in and use it. You will find immediately that the early game combat is much more bearable when your character is proficient in the weapon style to begin with. 2. I actually agree that this fatigue system is too old school for modern day. I'm going to link 2 mods in the description that can be very easily installed to fix this, and I play all my new playthroughs of Morrowind using them. And 3. Reading is a part of Morrowind, and I highly advise you do it. You will learn so much lore from it. I sometimes chuckle when I see people being amazed by the lore on some Elder Scrolls videos, but then I forget that they simply have missed the vast amount of knowledge hiding within the text of Morrowind's speech system, as well as the hundreds of books this series now contains. Hopefully this advice helps, and if they don't, then stick around for when I discuss modern and some modern day conversion projects later on in this video. Before we dive into the vast amount of merits for Morrowind, let's give a quick thanks to today's sponsor, me. That's right, if you made it this far and want to see more old school game critiques and reviews, then consider leaving a like, commenting what you think, and subscribing for more like this. Where to begin? There are hundreds of videos discussing the many praises for this game, but I'm going to go over the aspects that are most important to me. The freedom. Morrowind offers a lack of hand-holding and urgency that I miss in the newer games in the series. There isn't an amulet of kings you must get to the blades, there's no imminent dragon threat looming over your head. You're instead advised to go see some random guy in some random town. With no agency to do so, you're left to your own devices. I understand that for many, this is actually a negative point, and can even feel overwhelming when you have no clear task. But for me, this freedom is what I like about sandbox games. There is no expectation thrust upon the player to do anything but explore and forge their own path in this brand new world. And what a world it is. Exploration is a cornerstone of the Elder Scrolls series, and with modern Bethesda games in general. And much like how Fallout offers a world that is familiar to us, yet not quite like our own, so does Morrowind. Medieval-esque buildings stand against a backdrop of giant mushrooms and floating asteroids. Familiar, yet different. Humanoid beings walk among humongous crab shells. Weapons and armor mimic our own, yet use materials not found on Earth. It is this perfect exposition of alien versus relatable that makes the island of Vardenfell one of the most interesting locations the series has ever visited. We aren't in some generic high fantasy setting shared by hundreds of games before, or in a Nordic frozen wasteland again visited by many other games. Instead, we have a location that is entirely unique. This exposition of the familiar against the unknown can be seen further within the culture of the Dunmer people. Whereas the Imperials pull much influence from our real-world Romans and from the medieval kingdoms of Europe, and the Nords are literal copy-pastes of the Nordic countries of Earth, The Dark Elves of Morrowind share a culture unlike anything seen on our planet. Sure, they share similarities to many people on Earth. They're afraid of foreigners and their effect on the country, they look down on races they deem lesser than them, they even force some of these races into slavery. And yet they are still unique enough to not be tied to any one culture that we may recognise from our own history. They worship real living gods with powers that can be seen in-game. Their history tells a story of how they were outcast for their religion and through the mighty powers of the Daedra were transformed into the beings that they now are. The Demeri people have some of the most interesting history in the series, and in Morrowind's entire main story focuses on multiple quests teaching this lore to the player, through dialogue with NPCs as well as a multitude of text and scriptures you must obtain through your journey. It seems clear to me that Bethesda were proud of the lore they had written here, and made a clear point to get the player invested into it. An alien land isn't complete without alien creatures, and I'm not just talking about the grey-skinned, red-eyed, 180 cigarette a day smoking inhabitants of this island. Morrowind throws caution to the wind when it comes to high fantasy, forgetting all the cliches from Daggerfall such as bears, harpies and imps. Instead, we are treated to a full roster of entirely unique inventions. For example, the two-legged Jwlar, who doubles as the locals' pack animals, and their similar but much more aggressive elite cousins, the ant-like Scrib, whose shrieks can be heard all over and whose breath has the power to paralyze, leading a less knowledgeable adventurer to succumb to the death of 1,000 bug bites. These Scrib later grow to become the Quama, a species that lay eggs underground. These eggs are then used as the prime source of food for the local Dunmer, including the jelly from the previously mentioned Scrib. Morrowind sure has a lot of things, but cuisine isn't one of them.
Eggs.
Taken to the skies, and we have the large netches that dominate the air of the marshes and grazelands of the island, whose leather is used for armour in lieu of the traditional kind. And of course, there are the cliff racers. I will admit that these are far too common in this game. Yes, they're canonically the vermin of this land, being such a nuisance that the first Dunmer to greet us, Jwlar, later achieves sainthood after he drives these annoying creatures from Vardenfell. I will not blame anyone for installing a mod to reduce their numbers, but if like me you like to snipe them out the sky, they can act as the perfect target to do so. There's not just fauna either, the enemies of this game are something else. I won't disagree that Oblivion and Skyrim are also capable of creating some alarming and horrifying enemies, but Bethesda's third installment has to take the cake for me. The ash creatures of Daggerfall's armies are more than f***ed up. First, a Dunmer is infected by the soul sickness. It isn't known how it is contracted, only that those affected find themselves having more and more restless nights, walking out into the streets at night, stuck in a clouded dreamlike state. The dreams convey a barrage of messages from Daggerfall himself, telling the sufferers of his plan to drive out the Imperial and Outlander invaders from Vardenfell. After weeks of no sleep and hypnosis from the Mad God, the Dunmer lose their sense of identity and become aggressive. These are known as Dreamers. Shunned by their communities, they wander to the evil 6-house bases dotted around Morrowind. Here, they face the most gruesome transformation ever documented within the elderscrolls. Over time, they slowly lose their eyes, becoming the Ash Slaves. They consume hunks of corpus meat, the flesh of the horribly deformed sufferers of the corpus disease, whom share a place among the ash creatures within the 6-house bases. Eventually, the entirety of their face rots out of their head, leaving them as the Ash Zombie. Don't be fooled by the name, however, these beings are still lucid and not undead. If you can calm these creatures with a spell, you may speak to them and learn of their suffering. They beg for sleep, for Daggerfall to let them sleep. They don't seem aware of what has happened to their face, only that they now cannot see and cannot hear. Later, a tentacle works its way out of the hole within the face, and the creature gains a whole new consciousness. They are now fully serving of Daggerfall and are granted new magical abilities. These are the Ash Ghouls. Their final transformation ends with them rising to become ascended sleepers, losing almost all of their past Dunmer bodies. These terrifying beings are more tentacle than mer. I hope that little horror story there makes it clear why the enemies of this game are great. Without Michael Kirkbride's drug-addled mind, the world of Morrowind would be a whole lot less interesting, that's for sure. The magic of Morrowind offers one of the most dynamic vanilla magic systems in any Elder Scrolls so far. No power is blocked from you. If you want to levitate hundreds of feet in the air while firing down an icy death onto the people below, you can, given you are a powerful enough mage to do so. In lore, the battle mages of Tamriel are meant to be some of the most terrifying warriors in the entire land, and Morrowind makes it clear why. You can buff yourself to have the strength of Numidian himself and strike your opponent with the force of 1,000 suns, and all of this is entirely vanilla and possible to the player. Yes, it was unbalanced, but so is magic itself. If someone on our planet had the power to cast magic, they would also be seen as OP, that's simply how it is. So why nerf that possibility from the player? By removing the spell-making ability in Skyrim, magic was pushed to the side, leaving instead stealth and warrior builds to be the main viable options, which makes little sense in a universe where a mage was able to imprison an emperor into the plane of Oblivion and then convincingly impersonate him for years, all due to his magic abilities. The removal of levitation from the Elder Scrolls is one of the most egregious and laziest choices by Bethesda. They removed an important aspect of the game, an aspect that had entire dungeons designed around it with hidden loot on ledges only accessible to the magically inclined, and it was removed just because the engine was unable to run smoothly on the hardware of the time.
Look how they massacred my boy.
There's also the enchanting system. While this remains similar to the modern games, in Morrowind you could pay someone to enchant an item for you. This makes sense. In a capitalist society, if someone has a skill, they have the option to offer said skill for a fee, without expecting everyone to learn it. This meant a warrior build was not left without the ability to enchant his own equipment just because he wasn't skilled in that ability. He could instead pay someone to do it for him. This related to spells too. Skyrim removes this because the modern Elder Scrolls wants you to do everything. They don't push real role-playing anymore.
I'm sure you can figure it out on your own. If you can't, perhaps Urag has a book you can read. My pleasure. Until next time.
Look at this menu. Everything you need in one place. Morrowind was the last Elder Scrolls made with the PC in mind first, and the way the menu works is the best way of showing this. You can resize every menu to how you like it, and not only that, but you could pin any section of the menu to be permanently on your heads-up display, meaning that you could always have your map up, or quick access to your spells and enchanted items. While we're on the menu, here you can see my character kitted out in layers of gear. You see, in Morrowind, your character could actually wear clothes underneath their armour, which is much more understandable than being bare nude under some freezing cold metal plates.
It's minus 10 degrees! How aren't you dead?
This also meant you could buff the hell out of yourself with some enchanted items. The game even allows you to have mismatching pauldrons and gauntlets, truly allowing you to kit out your playable character how you see fit. The factions of Morrowind feel the most real we have ever had, only matched by the brilliant quest writing of Oblivion. Faction quests would start easy and get harder with time and skill. Factions even war against each other and the questlines intersect. Without proper planning, you would be unable to complete both the Thieves Guild and Fighters Guild, for example. But most importantly of all, you could only be promoted if you were leveled in that guild's skill sets. No warrior who could only cast a measly fire spell becoming the Archmage of the College of Winterhold. No stealthy archer becoming the Harbinger of the Companions. Role-playing mattered. While you could become the head of most factions in one playthrough, it would take much longer and much more planning than simply starting a new build with the skills needed. This encouraged replaying the game, as well as actual role-playing. I won't lie here, Morrowind's main quest neither had the epicness of Oblivion's nor the grandeur of Skyrim's, but it does do one thing right. You aren't a Mary Sue. Not exactly anyway. Yes, you fit a prophecy, being born on a certain date and under a certain star, but so are many people. You aren't special in that regard. The Emperor didn't see you in any dreams and you weren't born with the divine blood of the Dragonborn. The godlike powers you obtain in the game are earned. You earn your immortality. It was you who got infected with Corporus, and it was you who helped find the cure. You gained the trust of every tribe and every house. You had to jump through the hoops to be named Hortata and Nerevarine. You proved yourself worthy of Azura's blessings. This game didn't give you anything. No Amulet of Kings proving your story, no Dragon Souls powering your abilities. Everything that happened because you made it so. The game even touched on how you aren't even that special, showing many other failed Nerevarines before you, all who had met the prophecy but weren't as successful as you were in your quest. It was this feeling of progression that makes the story stand out. It's a story of learning, understanding and mastering. You start by learning about this alien culture, and then you must work with them and start to understand them. And finally you must rise to the occasion, prove yourself as their saviour and vanquish the evil that blights them. Also, you get to fight a literal god, unlike in Oblivion where you merely aid someone else to do so. With every good story, there is a good bad guy, and boy does Morrowind deliver there. Daggerfall is everything you want in a character known as the Mad God. I don't care if Morrowind seemingly blew all of their voice acting budget on him, it was worth it.
Dagoth welcomes you, Nerevar, my old friend. I'm a god. How can you kill a god? What a grand and intoxicating innocence. Omnipotent, omniscient, sovereign, immutable. How sweet it is to be a god.
An enemy who is rightfully cocky and not for one moment scared of the player until the very last second. There's a reason that to this day, he is the subject of some of the best memes the Elder Scrolls fandom have to offer.
I'm a god. How can you kill a god? What a grand and intoxicating innocence.
And like any well-written big bad guy, he has a compelling narrative that may even make you want to join him in the end, although that is unfortunately not allowed. Compare this to Mehrunes Dagon, who doesn't even have a line of dialogue in Oblivion, or Alduin the World Eater, whom we learn little about other than he's gonna eat the world. Morrowind, like many games of that era, used ample amounts of stock sound effects that you likely have heard before. But that doesn't stop these ambient sound effects being used perfectly to add the necessary atmosphere to the environment. Travelling through the Ashlands was adequately creepy, with the distant horns of Red Mountain blaring as small rocks fall and the faint call of a silt strider can be heard over the horizon. Just listen to this. Last but not least, the music. Can you believe that Jeremy Soul's soundtrack for Morrowind barely lasts 1 hour, and yet the songs are so iconic, so timeless, that they are still being used and recycled as the themes and music of the series to this day? Seriously, Skyrim's theme is literally Morrowind's theme, with angry monks screaming over it. Exploration is like a surreal yet calming dream as you walk through tranquil surroundings listening to Soul's perfect music. Much like many aspects that make the Elder Scrolls the legendary series it is today, modding within the Elder Scrolls series traces its roots back to Morrowind. Yep, you owe all your Skyrim porn mods to this game. The first game in the series to allow such extensive modifications, the game was released with a copy of Bethesda's own in-house development tool, the Construction Set. This allowed absolutely anyone to launch a program and fundamentally change most aspects of the game. Like with Skyrim and Oblivion, there is a mod for anything in Morrowind. If you can think of it, someone has likely already modded it. I'm just going to go over some of the ones that I think are most important and that I recommend. Graphically, Morrowind is very dated. Launched in 2002, it was praised for its then incredible graphic. But like with your favourite childhood crush, time can have many bad effects. Luckily, as Morrowind uses a pure 3D engine, many of these woes can be fixed with mods. While I personally stick to a basic draw distance extender, as I quite like the vanilla textures and feel, huge mod packs like the MGSO or Morrowind Graphic and Sound Overhaul can entirely alter the look of the game to resemble something closer to a 2010 release. You can tweak all kinds of gameplay mechanics too. I personally use a fatigue mod as well as an extensive patch called the Morrowind code patch. This seeks to fix many bugs tied to Morrowind's code, as well as offer modern abilities such as being able to cast a spell while holding a weapon, much like in Oblivion. Finally, when it comes to the world, Morrowind has some of the most extensive world building mods out there, rivaled only by the multiple ongoing Beyond Skyrim mods in production. Although unlike those, you can actually play these mods. Huge expansions like Tamriel Rebuilt and world-altering modifications like Morrowind Rebirth add hundreds of hours extra content, making Morrowind one of the densest and deepest Elder Scrolls experiences available today. Bethesda themselves even released free DLC for everyone as a way to promote what could be done with the construction kit. The company that would go on to sell horse armor gave away higher quality mods for free just 4 years earlier. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. And guess what? Not only is the Morrowind modding community alive and well, it is about to receive its biggest injection of innovation yet. The OpenMW team are working hard to recreate Morrowind's game engine from the ground up, completely open source. What this means for Morrowind is that no longer will mods be limited by the construction set, nor the NetImmerse engine. Instead, mods can, theoretically, be almost unlimited in their scope as long as the modders in question have the necessary skills at hand. Morrowind is a game that simply refuses to die, transcending past a cult classic and into gaming royalty. A 10th divine, if you will. Oh, and by the way, with OpenMW, there is already a working and functional multiplayer mod for Morrowind, allowing players to work cooperatively in the game world. This is exactly what people wanted when they asked for an online Elder Scrolls, not the MMO we ended up getting. You can even play the game on your phone. Don't get any ideas about another Skyrim release, Todd.
Do you guys not have phones? Yeah, you guys all have phones, right?
But what if, after all this, the game is still too old for you? I will first ask you to please give it a chance. With the tweaks already mentioned, they seriously make the game much more approachable. But if combat really is such a big sticking point, then there is always the full conversion mods, such as the already released Morrowind or the upcoming Skywind. Morrowind allows you to play the entire game within Oblivion's engine, including the upgraded combat that came with that game. This is also honestly the only way I play stealth characters in Morrowind, as the base game's stealth features are a little clunky by modern day standards. When Skywind does release sometime in, let's say 2030, I'm sure that will also be a brilliant way for the reluctant gamer to experience this awesome game too. As mentioned earlier, that mod will come with full voice acting, so it should be the most accessible version of Morrowind seen to date. With Morrowind's success came the rebirth of Bethesda. No longer were they a dying company, but instead a developer motivated to do more. No longer would they stretch themselves too thin, instead choosing to focus on one game at a time. Next Oblivion, then Fallout 3, and finally Skyrim. Each time breaking more records and winning more awards. They were proving themselves to be a force to be reckoned with within the gaming climate, even though, by all accounts, they remain a medium-sized firm compared to the Goliaths of the industry. Before the mishaps of the last 5 years, Bethesda was a name of prestige that mustered ideas of grand and fun game experiences unlike anything else in the gaming landscape at the time. And it can all be owed to Bethesda's last shot at victory, their final attempt to make right the mistakes of Battlespire and Redguard. By the time of its release in 2002, Morrowind had gone through a development hell spanning 6 years. This game was set to release in 1998 according to a leaflet bundled with Battlespire, but due to development problems associated not just with budget constraints but also with a lack of focus from Bethesda themselves, as well as a problem known as feature creep due to the fast changing world of video games in the late 90s. The dev team knew of these constraints and worries. The pressures in the studio were the highest they had ever been, with many past members citing that Morrowind's development was the most stressful part of their career. Morrowind was set to be made using the same X engine as Daggerfall, but over the years, technology such as 3D acceleration had dramatically changed PC gaming. Eventually, Bethesda had settled on the Net Immerse game engine, an MMORPG engine that was used by games such as The Dark Age of Camelot. This engine would later be known as Gamebryo. With this huge change, Bethesda would have to spend valuable time learning said new engine and essentially starting all over again. It was this inexperience with the new engine, as well as the huge time constraints and ungodly levels of crunch, that led not only to many of the bugs in Morrowind, but to bugs that plagued all of the subsequent releases in the Elder Scrolls series, as well as Bethesda's Fallout games, including Fallout 76. Due to these constraints of its development, Bethesda were forced to adopt a good enough mentality. They didn't have time to smooth out everything, instead accepting that if it worked, it was good enough. This mentality, however, didn't end with the development of Morrowind. This can be seen with the implementations of the many future technologies that were bolted onto the Gamebryo engine, an engine that by all accounts is very capable. Look at Havoc physics, used by hundreds if not thousands of games, yet only in Bethesda games do we see these glitches. The code engine powering the Radiant AI was too bulky and glitchy and was eventually scrapped for a far more streamlined approach come Fallout 4. It's been said many places online before, but Bethesda doesn't have an engine problem, but a company culture problem. They don't focus on making the technology perfect, just leaving it in a state that is barely stable. The fact that one of the biggest sticking points the team had with Fallout 76 was that they had to gut and rewrite code from Morrowind nearly 15 years after that game's release shows this problem. They never went back to fix what was broken. Instead, like some dodgy builder cowboy deciding to build a house on shoddy foundations and then add more and more floors and wings to said house over time, with no regard for building standards. While Morrowind did a lot of good for Bethesda and gaming as a whole, most of Bethesda's current problems can be dated back to the development hell this game went through. We can only hope that when it comes to Starfield and the Elder Scrolls 6, they will have finally addressed these issues. My story with Morrowind starts when I was 12 years old in 2008. I was in my second year of high school and a new store was opening in my town, Game Station. This now defunct game retailer was the highlight of every day for me, as it was positioned perfectly on my walk from school. Every day I would browse the shelf, seeing an abundance of games I had never even heard of, a memory I'm sure a lot of gamers can relate to. And can we talk for a minute about the branding used by Game Station? It really was designed by a boomer who thought kids interested in games like Crash Bandicoot and Myst were really the cool kids. Yeah, look at all that graffiti, this is what a badass looks like in its true form. I was only just discovering PC games, having only played PS1 and PS2 games at the time. Luckily for me, Game Station's pre-owned section was extensive, with offers like Bog Off and free for £10 allowing us to buy games cheaper than ever. It was in 2008 that I hit the jackpot, bought some of the best games the PC had to offer at the time. The Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind, Rome Total War, and Rise of Nations. I said goodbye to my evenings and weekends and entered a whole new world of gaming. So, should you play Morrowind in 2020? Yes, without a doubt, please give it a chance. Whether it's the original version, a modded version, or a full conversion mod, this is a must play for any Elder Scrolls fan as well as an RPG fan. Give it at least 2 hours of your time. If you don't like it, then so be it. But I guarantee anyone who likes role-playing games is gonna enjoy Morrowind.
I'm a god. How can you kill a god? What a grand and intoxicating innocence. I'm a god. How can you kill a god? Shame on you, sweet Lara.
Hey, thanks for watching the video, I really appreciate it. If you've gotten this far, then please leave it a like and comment what you think, and subscribe for more. I'll be uploading around every 2 to 3 weeks, depending on how long the videos are. This was the longest one I've ever done, so it took about 3 weeks to make. Thanks for watching.
I'm a god.